Ron, what made you decide to take on the District 8 seat in your area, given all the positive side, the resources that are there, the creeks and the like, but the large population, the commercial and other amenities in District 8?
Well, I mean, Howard, we've talked about this before. I came to San Antonio in '95. I did my undergraduate at Trinity, and I've always been interested in the community. I've always, gravitated towards positions that would allow me to serve the community even when I'm working. And actually, you were mayor when I came to San Antonio, believe it or not. But I think you're absolutely right. There's just so many interests out in District 8. We have a tremendously diverse community. In fact, I would say that District 8, if you look at socioeconomics and demographics and the political spectrum, is probably the most diverse district in San Antonio, just overall.
Yeah.
To me, that's a huge opportunity for San Antonio, that if we allow for politics as usual, we see how divisive it can become. And we also see that there's tremendous challenges within our community on those issues of natural resources, on those issues of commercial interests, keeping our economy steady. I think it's important to me because, I have a young son now. By the time the election rolls around, he'll be almost 5. I want us to be able to do well by him and his generation, so that all these challenges that we're facing, that we have people that are going to step up and make the right decisions without regard to whose interests am I serving, just the community's best interest. And I'm not an insider by any means. That's been one of my challenges, but I think it's also a strength, that I'm free and clear. I really am, to make the best decisions for the community, irrespective of what the politics are. And that's what, when I've been walking around the community, and we talked about this also, it's really about getting out and listening to your neighbors.
Absolutely.
And, when I've been walking out in the community, when I've been, going door to door, whether I'm at a polling site or just at a neighborhood event, people want that. They want people who are going to serve their best interests and not worry about political consequences, rather worry about what's the right thing to do. And that's all I want to do.
Well, that's the way it should be, and unfortunately it doesn't always happen that way, but in this case, it looks like we've got the kind of candidate that District 8 needs, but also for the city at large, because you'll be just one of 10 people plus the mayor, and have an opportunity to keep the ship right, if you will, and not let things slide away just because there's something else over here. But you've got to play this for all parts of your district and the city as a whole. I
mean, certainly, Bonnie Connor's my treasurer, and that was she helped introduce us, and I had known you from afar before, but Bonnie has been a very big supporter and also a mentor, just as you've become. And I'm always curious, because you and she and folks like Phil Hardberger have really pushed on the idea that parks and open lands and natural resources are part of our core responsibilities as a city. Mm-hmm. It's not we talk about infrastructure, we talk about public safety, but things like the library system and the park system are in the charter. Yeah, we really have to take care of those. So what was your approach to the parks? Because prior to that, it really wasn't getting as much attention, and now we've got the greenway trail system, we've got the linear parks, and certainly we've got some big city parks that are doing very well for the rest of the community. What was your approach there?
Well, I'll use the linear parks system as an example. I was doing a little bit of research about Salado Creek, and from that bit of research, I realized that we had an opportunity to have a circle of hike and bike trails around San Antonio. as luck would have it, with the Salado Creek on the east side of San Antonio and going up north to above 1604, and then just a short distance is the headwaters of the Leon Creek, and that
we had a debate there last night, actually.
Oh, did you really?
We did.
Well, then, so you've got that side, the west side of the Leon Creek, connecting the Medina River and over to the San Antonio. So that created that circle that I don't know that there's anything like this, but we're making good progress on connecting the pieces that we're building, and probably in a few more years we're going to have that complete circle.
And it's huge in District 8. I mean, one of the reasons why we moved to where we are in District 8 is because that was starting to develop, and it's just a beautiful amenity. It's part of our infrastructure now.
Yeah.
So what's next? I mean, what does the next council, if we're going to advance this initiative, what is the next council going to be facing to make sure that that really gets complete?
Well, it's one of those things that, fortunately, once a project like this gets up and rolling, it would be very hard to take that away. One of the things that helped get the program as far as it is right now is that I didn't want to rely on the city budget for the funding of the projects, because there's all kinds of reasons why not to do something. So what I did was, in the very beginning, initiated a 1/8 of a cent sales tax. So we've got sales tax money, and don't have to worry about funds from the city that can fluctuate one way or the other.
And that was a voter initiative.
That's right.
So
3 times the voters have approved the 1/8 of a cent sales tax. If timing goes the way I'm seeing it now, in about 2 years we'll have another sales tax election to keep the program going.
Yeah, and that would be keeping the same funds, not additional funds. It would be the same 8 cent. We're just continuing the process.
Yes.
Okay. And and I think it's remarkable that we have these things that go before voters that are clearly related to quality of life, and you see the results of them quite often overwhelming. Things like the Edwards Aquifer Initiative, the Protection Initiative, that goes before voters. Some of the most largest consensus on issues like the Edwards Aquifer. So, the other issue, obviously, with regard to balancing interests, one of the other issues in District 8 is going to be the Edwards Aquifer. We've had a lot of chances at fixing water and our water security over the course of the years. What do you think are going to be some of those pressure points that we're going to have to address with water coming up in the next 4, 8, 12 years?
Well, as you know, the Linear Parks program and the Edwards Aquifer have shared the 1/8 of a cent sales tax. When that proposition came up for the vote, both were together, and we've been together each time, and I expect that there'll be something of that sort. I do know that the creeks are going to be on a ballot again, but one of the things that the Edwards portion of the sales tax has allowed us to buy land outside of San Antonio, but has connections to San Antonio through the Edwards system.
Well, and certainly this is a issue that's very important to me, and I was just curious if that was one of the reasons why you decided to endorse me is my stance on the aquifer, because it's one of those we have to get it right situations. We can't compromise on the aquifer, because it is, regardless of diversification, it will remain our number one, by a long measure, our main source of drinking water. And I was actually at an event last night. It was a debate. I was unfortunately the only person to show up, but there were young people all over there, and I was trying to explain to them the issue of water and why the aquifer is important. The question was raised by one of the organizers about the aquifer, and their eyes got really big, when we started talking about drinking water
Uh-huh.
instead of just the aquifer. And so, it's one of those issues, I think, that it's not on the minds of every voter, but I think we owe every voter an honest discussion about it. And unfortunately, I think it's one of those issues that can be very politicized very quickly. But certainly water and just having an open conversation about that is going to be very important to me. So,
Well, just think about San Antonio without the Edwards Aquifer.
We wouldn't be
Other
here.
cities have rivers. Some of them have coastal sources. But for the most part, San Antonio gets its water from the underground system of the Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that we need to make sure that we do all we can to preserve it and not let something happen that would, God forbid, would contaminate our source of water.
Yeah. Was it your experience? Because it's been my experience on the campaign trail. You work with communities, you work with businesses, you also work with other interest groups just to understand where they're coming from, what their concerns are. There are the vast majority of businesses and development community members in this community also believe that the aquifer is something that we really need to protect. Otherwise, our economic competitiveness is gone.
Yeah.
And there's many stewards within that community. So how can we leverage the stewards of those communities to make sure that they put pressure on the folks that maybe don't have the community's best interests in mind? How did you work that relationship to make sure that we're not going to stop growth, but we need to manage it in the best and most responsible way?
Well, that's the key word, is managing it. And sometimes a direction is contemplated that's not in our best interest. Again, doing all that we can to protect our sole source of water, and making sure that as San Antonio continues to grow, that we have enough water for the future.
Yeah. Well, Howard, I know you're a busy guy. You've taken over at the San Antonio Parks Foundation, and it's an organization that I don't think people realize how much they do in this community. The New Year's Eve Bash, Jazz Alive, Festive Tales just happened.
Yeah.
So appreciate that you're staying so much involved, and I also appreciate your guidance and mentorship on my campaign, and I know you're going to continue to be a resource for me on council. And I do appreciate the fact that you're willing to have an open conversation, because a lot of this is about open, honest conversations. I say that on the campaign trail. I want people to know that it's true. So I've asked you to come here and just have a conversation we just have publicly, even though we don't have always the space to put as many people as we want. But I want people to know that the leaders, the folks that I respect, who respect me and who have endorsed me, who are advising me, constituents, can come in and listen to these conversations, because this is how we're going to address problems, in my belief.
Yeah, no
is that
question.
we're really going to have to come together and have these tough and difficult conversations at times, but they ought to be public. And so it's my commitment to have these, and I'm glad you're on board with that. So.
Well, good. I have no doubt that you'll finish out this campaign, and that you'll be ready to serve and after the campaign. And I wish you all the luck for District 8, but for the city as well.
Right, I appreciate that, Howard. And just letting everybody know, April 29th starts early voting, and obviously election is on May 11th. I do hope to earn your vote as well, and I do hope you listen to this, forward this conversation to your friends, who people are interested in these issues. We'll be back again with some other civic leaders and community members, and hope to earn your support. You can learn more about my campaign at voteron8.com. Like us on Facebook at voteron8. And Mayor Peak, thank you so much for having a conversation with me.
My pleasure. Thanks.
That was fun.